Council, and Doug Stewart was appointed to be the chapter advisor. The chapter advisor created bylaws for the new chapter, which have been approved by both the faculty, council, and the principal. In January of 2004, the registrar reported to the chapter advisor those students who met the scholastic requirement of a 3.67 cumulative GPA. Each student who was eligible was given an activity information form in which they gave evidence of their activities in service and leadership. The BMA staff were given faculty evaluation forms in which they were to evaluate each candidate in the areas of leadership, service, and character. The chapter advisor compiled all of this material and called meetings in which the faculty council voted to approve or disapprove the future induction of each candidate. The same format has been used this year, so congratulations. Since the 2004-2005 school year, the chapter has met monthly and been actively involved in service projects such as honoring the American flag by raising it each morning and lowering it each evening, reaching out as individuals to other students on campus, helping them in their academic challenges, and being leaders. Thank you so much for being here.
As president of NHS, I would like to thank you for coming to this induction service. We hope that you all enjoy this service and celebrate with us the things these students have accomplished. Membership in the Blue Mountain Academy chapter of the National Honors Society is earned by the effective demonstration of the 4 qualities held in high esteem by the Society. 4 of our members will review these qualities for our candidates. Scholarship.
Scholarship means a commitment to learning. A student is willing to spend hours in reading and studying, knowing the lasting benefits of a cultivated mind. We should continue to learn even when formal education is ending, for education ends only at the end of life. Knowledge is one great element in life which leads to the highest success, and it can be acquired in only one way, through diligence and effort. Learning furnishes the lamp by which we read the past, and the light which illuminates the future. Candidates have the charge to continually expand their world through the opportunities inherent in scholarship.
Service.
Service can be described in various ways. In the routine of the day's work, many opportunities arise to help others. Willingness to work for the benefit of those in need without monetary compensation or without recognition is the quality we seek in our members. We are committed to the idea of volunteering our time and abilities to the creation of a better tomorrow.
Leadership.
Leadership should exert a wholesome influence on the school. In taking the initiative in class and school activities, the real leader strives to train and aid others to attain the same objective. The price of leadership is sacrifice, the willingness to yield one's personal interests for the interests of others. A leader has self-confidence and will go forward when others hesitate. No matter what power and resources may exist in a country, they are ineffectual without the guidance of a wise leader. Leadership is always needed. Thus, to lead is a substantive charge to each of our members.
Character.
character is the force within each individual which distinguishes that person from the others. It gives each one individuality. It is that without which no one can respect oneself nor hope to attain the respect of others. It is this force of character which guides one through life, and when once developed, grows steadily. Character is achieved and not received. It is the product of constant action, daily striving to make the right choice. The problem with character is the problem of self-control. We must be in reality what we wish to appear to others. By demonstrating such qualities as respect, responsibility, trustworthiness, fairness, caring, and citizenship, we may hope to prove by example that we value character.
The motto of the National Honor Society and of this chapter is Noblesse Oblige. This is a French phrase which reminds its members of their obligation to reach out to others and share talents and gifts which God has granted them.
May the inductees please rise. We'll recite the NHS induction pledge. Repeat after me. I pledge to maintain high scholastic standing.
I pledge to maintain a high scholastic standing.
To hold as fundamental and worthy.
To hold as fundamental and worthy.
An untarnished character.
An untarnished character.
To endeavor intelligently and courageously.
To endeavor intelligently and courageously.
To be a leader.
To be a leader.
And to give of myself freely in service to Christ and others.
And to give up myself freely in service to Christ and others.
I will strive to be at all times a model student.
I will strive to be a model student.
And will never knowingly
And will never knowingly
bring reproach upon my school.
bring reproach upon my school.
I also pledge myself
I also pledge myself
to uphold the high purpose of this society,
to uphold the high purpose of this society,
for which I have been selected,
for which I have been selected,
striving in every way,
striving in every way,
by word and deed,
by word and deed,
to make its ideals
to make its ideals,
the ideals of my school and of my life.
the ideals of my school and my life.
You may be seated.
Will the inductees please rise? The register is very important to us because it contains a list of people who have been inducted into our club and stay in our club since the beginning of the club 15 years ago. Each inductee will sign their name in the book, beginning with Nahia Lee. Troy Serena. Annalise Jacobs. Esteban Guevara. Alexandra Merkin. Brandon Reese. Allison Smith. And White Bay Yu.
We're privileged this evening to introduce our speaker. Dr. Leif Christensen is a graduate of Coleman Academy, Columbia Union College, Kansas College of Osteopathic Medicine, and completed his residency in Flint, Michigan, where he was the chief resident and spent several months working in Guam. He has been an upstanding community leader in the Reading area for the past 30 years, and he has been practicing internal medicine. I know he's been here for a long time because I taught all 4 of his sons. Thank you, Dr. Christensen, for being our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. It's an honor to be back at Blue Mountain Academy. Probably the other thing I should have told him is that my wife is a graduate of this school. So it bears a dear part to our family. And obviously, my 4 sons all graduated from here. The National Honor Society is obviously a prestigious organization. Many times we think of it only in light of a scholarship role, but that is not the case really. As you've seen tonight, it's actually several other pillars that make it up. I think I don't need this at this time, but I believe if you look at the front, yes, this is the symbol of the National Honor Society. Let's see if I can avoid burning the paper, but this is what I was going to show you. And symbols are very interesting. Symbols are a way to express from an organization, a belief, or some means to even express an opinion. In my days, in my younger days, the peace sign was very popular. And I'm sure there are many other emblems today in your fast-paced life with your cell phone. You have lots of other symbols to go by. Well, let's take an example of the United States national emblem. Now, this is not a large picture, but if you can see it, and many of you have probably seen this before, this is an emblem of the national, for the United States. It is the picture of the bald eagle. And just for your interest, the bald eagle was chosen on June 20, 1782, as the emblem of the United States of America because of its long life, its great strength, and its majestic looks, and also because it was then believed to exist only in the continent of the United States. Now, it wasn't an easy decision for Congress to make because Benjamin Franklin didn't like the decision. And he was not in agreement with Congress over their choice of the bird. He thought the turkey was a much more respectful bird to pick for the national anthem. And at least in my younger days, we used to call people a turkey. That wasn't a majestic name. If you were a turkey, it didn't convey the same thing. You're a bald eagle. So here's what Benjamin Franklin wrote about the bald eagle. And he wished that the bald eagle had not been chosen as the representative of our country. It's a bird of bad moral character. He does not get his living honestly. You may have seen in person some dead trees where the bird is too lazy to fish for himself, and he watches the labor of the fishing hawk, and when the diligent bird has his fish in its hooks and takes it to his nest, the bald eagle goes and takes it from him. And these bald eagles pursue them, and it just is not the type of character that Benjamin Franklin wanted. He thought it was a rank coward. He didn't like it. He saw that the kingbird, no bigger than the sparrow, attacks this bold person and actually drives him out of the area, or the district as you could do it. So he did not think it was a proper emblem for the brave, the honest of America. For the truth, the turkey is the group in comparison is a much more respectful bird. And it's a true, original Native American bird of courage and would not hesitate to attack a grenade of British soldiers in their redcoats if it came to the property of the farm. So, we have a symbol here in front of us. The symbol here is of the 4 pillars that the National Honor Society observes. Its 4 pillars, as you come to just see and understand, come with a mission. And those 4 pillars are scholarship, leadership, service, and character. Tonight, those of us who are already in the National Honor Society and those who have been inducted have been chosen by a group of faculty members based on the criteria that has been given to them by the National Honor Society. These standards have been their guide for the induction of these students into the society. let us take a look at the four characters, or the four pillars, that this has agreed to come about. Now, I remember when I was inducted into the National Honor Society in Tacoma Academy. We had several people obviously inducted as tonight, and I remember we were teased by the students as being, quote, the smart people. But in reality, tonight, you're not just seeing smart people. You're seeing people who have had certain levels of quality of academic scholarship, but we're looking at other characteristics as well. I'd like to take, as an example of each pillar, a biblical character, and look at these four characteristics that the National Honor Society has given us. Let's start off with academic scholarship. If you look at academic scholarship, you probably would begin to think, well, who is the smartest person in the Bible? Who would you think would be the smartest person in the Bible? So I would take a look at this and say probably Solomon was probably the smartest person in the Bible. Would Solomon have been chosen in the National Honor Society if he was a teenager here at Blue Mountain Academy? Well, his father was King David. His mother was Bathsheba. She was considered to be a very beautiful wife. And his parents, obviously of royalty now, we only have him recorded as being born. And Scripture records that God loved him at his birth. Now, how would you like to have a father that was king? He was also considered to be quite a chorister. He was the master of songs, master of the Psalms. What else was he? He was a great warrior. What was he before he was king? Well, he outwitted the previous king. He killed 1,000, and David killed 10,000. He was the expansion of his physical kingdom. The border of Israel expanded enormously during the time period that he was there. How would you like to have a dad that had major accomplishments? We know nothing about Solomon's upbringing, his education, until David calls his wife Bathsheba and tells Solomon's mom that he's going to make Solomon king. And suddenly Solomon is anointed. There are no pre-announcements. He is now king of Israel, and David falls back. He's still king as well, but he has made Solomon charge because he is soon to die. We read this in 1 Kings 2, verses 2 to 9. And actually, if you go back, you will find that David actually gave him several commands. It's actually an amazing story in the history of Israel. And if you really look at Solomon's early reign, it would make a really great soap opera. But that's not what we're here to discuss. I think the interesting area of Solomon rises. He goes to worship, and he slaughters thousands of animals in the worship. And that night, he gets a dream. And the dream is from his king. It's from Jesus. And what happens? He's promised anything that he wants. It's the dream of genie that you always dream about. You have 3 wishes. What would you like to wish? And God gives him not three things, but God gives him the ability to choose. What do you want, Solomon? Solomon doesn't seem to hinder about what he wants. And again, you can read this in 1 Kings 3:9, and what he asked for. And you find out that Solomon wanted wisdom. He wanted discernment. But you know what else he wanted? He wanted to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. And he comes down from thereafter, becoming to be known as the most intelligent or most wise person in the Bible. See, we also know that Solomon's reign did not go as successful as King David. So intelligent is not the only dimension needed to be in this world. I would take from this several things that are needed for this academic achievement. Be prepared for your life's work. was what Solomon had to do. He all of a sudden came into being in terms of being king. And secondly, pray for wisdom, but pray also for discernment of right and wrong. The next biblical character I'd like to pick is actually a very interesting one. It's Moses. And he's an example of leadership. Very interesting role. Moses had actually 3 leadership roles. I would love to know more about his first 40 years. He was the ruler of Egypt, he was the military leader, and what little we know of archaeology, there were some great battles and victories fought, of which probably Moses was the military leader. He was the general. He was then, the next 40 years, he was shepherd. And it's very interesting, those 40 years, God gave him an education for training as a leader. He had received his first 40 years in worldly leadership. And Moses spent his last 40 years leading God's people in a mission to the Promised Land. Leadership has its sacrifices. And you can go back and look at the study and the history of Moses and look at each characteristic in those 40 years, all 3 periods of time, and you see different things come up from it. But when he was called to serve God and called to take his people back to the Promised Land, God had trained him as a shepherd. Think about that in terms of, I don't know how many of you have sheep or ever dealt with it. I've had the opportunity to have a few sheep on property, and I have a much more higher respect for a ram than ever before. I always got the impression that King David was out in the field just playing his harp and singing along, and it was an easy job. But those rams don't like people. And if you don't be careful, you'll find yourself on the ground. And so shepherding is not something that is just an easy job. You can go play your harp or your piano or your musical instrument. It's something much more difficult. You have to take care of these stupid beings. They don't know what to do. They're hungry. They want grass. They want fresh water. And there's things you have to protect them from. And Moses got a great leadership role by taking care of sheep. And it probably wasn't much different as he led the people of Israel to the Promised Land. The next biblical character I'd like to talk about is the biblical character that talks about the pillar of service. Tabitha is the person I come to mind. And we only have a very brief concept of Tabitha in the New Testament. It's actually in Acts 9, verses 36 to 42. And what's amazing, Peter was nearby, but all of a sudden they report this lady, Tabitha, whom we also know as Dorcas, dies. And there's great mourning because Tabitha was a servant. She did lots of things. She did a lot of good deeds, it says. It made coats and garments for people. When she died, there was a huge mourning out, bursting. This was, we just lost our First Lady, President Bush's wife. And then just think of this. This was a lady of prominence because of her deeds. So they called Peter. He came from another town. I don't know how long it took. She was dead more than a day, if you can imagine. And Peter raised her to life. And then there was great rejoicing. We don't know much at all other than her good deeds and that it says she made coats and garments. But service was a huge aspect in the success for that group and that community at that time. I look at the Old Testament and I think of Job. When you look at Job and what he did, not only was he over his own estate, Job stood at the gate. He was the judge. He was writing. He was the hospitable person. There are a lot of aspects of service you can go into. We saw music tonight as a line of service. And I can look back at my time period and why are these people selected? Is it just their academic achievement? Actually, if if you go back and you look at the National Honor Society guidelines for the faculty, they may not choose just academic as a means of getting into it. You can't just be smart. Service is a huge component of choice. And so where can you serve as a student? Well, you have your school. Are you involved? Do you do Pathfinders? Are you holding any offices in the school, in the dorm? How about church work? How about any other community activities? Do you get involved with anything else? How about sports? Do you do any running for people? Do you support the Muscular Dystrophy Society or other things in the community that are needs? These are areas in terms of which people look at. Where are you involved in terms of helping other people? You know, I understand your generation is a generation called entitled. I want to be served. I am entitled to everything. But that's not what the National Honor Society says. It says, I'm a servant to others. Lastly, let's take a look at Joseph. Joseph, to me, is the pillar of character. And you've heard some of the definition today of character. Joseph is a very interesting individual. Let's just take a look and think backwards a little bit in terms of what was it like. Joseph was a favorite son of Jacob. He was a dreamer boy. He was a privileged person. I don't know if he really worked hard at home. I mean, this was Jacob's special boy, firstborn of his favorite wife. He's shaken up by his brothers who sell him as a slave. Then he works as a slave and keeps his master's estate and finds out that he's now in prison because he's honest. He won't do certain things that are not right. And now he has to be in prison. And now he also becomes known as the dreamer boy again. Finally, he's exalted to become the vice president of Egypt. And now there's a famine that he has prepared for. And what happens? He meets his brothers. It's time for revenge, right? I'll get you back. We know that's not what he did. What character would survive all those insults? What would you have done if you'd been thrown into prison? What would you have done if you'd been accused falsely? What would you have done if your family deserted you? Your brothers or sisters sold you as a slave? Wouldn't it be great to get revenge? But his character wouldn't allow it. You have to ask, what prompted Joseph to be faithful in any position he ended up with? It is truly an amazing character to study. And we could go into what is character, but we find here faithfulness. We find what is your view of life? What are your morals? What are your ethical beliefs that you're going to stand by? We're a biblical church school. We call these types of things biblical world viewpoints. We have different concepts of what moral and ethical values are. Are you willing to hold them under any circumstance? Let's go back. Let's look at our symbol. Bald eagle started to have a symbol of strength, power, eliteness. It's at the top of the bird line. But after my experience of seeing the bald eagle in Alaska, I'm almost tempted to believe that Ben Franklin was right. The bird is more of a scavenger, coward. I love the soaringness in the air as it flies through it. I love the white head of the eagle, the stature, the bigness of the bird. Can you imagine the canary being your emblem? So there are aspects of this bird that just in his size and the concept that we have had that gives us the concept of, wow, this is a great emblem. And if you really look at it, the emblem has 13 arrows. It's our first 13 initial colonies. It has some other things in the other component. These are emblems. It has the seal. It has some pretty neat things involved with it. So the question we should really ask ourselves as we look at symbols, we look at the National Honor Society symbol. Are we proud to be part of it? Is it a symbol that we will represent? Will we have those 4 pillars? Will we have excellence in academic achievement? Will we have excellence in character? Will we have excellence in leadership? And will we have excellence in service? It is my hope that today, all of us who are here, whether we're inducted or not, will consider this 4 pillars a privilege to demonstrate around us the responsibility so we might represent this symbol correctly. Thank you. We stand for the closing prayer. Father in heaven, we ask your blessing as we depart, as we've gathered here today to celebrate and to honor those people who have made an achievement in these 4 pillars. May we all go forth and represent these pillars, because these are characters and characteristics of your kingdom that we would all like to be a part of. In thy name we pray.
Amen.